October 14th, 2023, 8:42 p.m. 32-year-old Hannah Mercer smiles at the cashier inside a suburban Denver grocery store, unaware it will be the last image of her alive. The surveillance camera above register 4 captures everything. The way she adjusts the strap of her purse, the quick glance at her phone, the polite laugh when the cashier apologizes for the long line. She looks relaxed, unhurried, completely at ease. Hours later, Hannah is found unresponsive in the parking lot outside that same store. Detectives replay the interior footage dozens of times. The jury will later see that smiling frame projected across a courtroom wall. Prosecutors will argue the timeline begins and ends inside the store. But it doesn't, because there was another camera, a parking lot angle no one focused on, a few seconds in the corner of the frame, a vehicle no one mentioned, a movement everyone overlooked. And when that angle is slowed down, stabilized, and examined closely, it tells a very different story. Tonight, you're going to see what they didn't. Hannah Mercer had built her life on routine. At 32, she was the kind of person friends described as steady, dependable, not reckless, not impulsive. She worked as a pediatric occupational therapist at a small private clinic in Lakewood, just west of Denver. Her days were structured around therapy blocks, progress notes, and parent meetings. She specialized in children on the autism spectrum, and she took that responsibility seriously. Parents trusted her. Kids responded to her calm voice. Her co-workers would later tell investigators the same thing. Hannah was cautious. She locked her car. She checked her surroundings. She never cut through dark shortcuts. She texted when she got home. That Saturday, October 14th, 2023, had been unremarkable. She started the morning at 7:15 a.m., making coffee in her one-bedroom apartment, a third-floor unit overlooking a busy street. She FaceTimed her younger sister in Phoenix around 9. They talked about holiday plans, about their mother's upcoming birthday, about nothing that hinted at urgency or fear. At 1:30 p.m., Hannah met 2 friends for lunch at a cafe in Belmar. Security footage there would later confirm what everyone said. She laughed easily. She paid with her credit card. She walked to her car alone and drove away. There was no argument, no suspicious call, no visible tension. That detail matters, because when someone disappears under mysterious circumstances, investigators often start by looking backward for warning signs. A fight, a threat, a strange encounter. In Hannah's case, there were none. By early evening, she texted her neighbor to ask if she needed anything from the grocery store. The message was time-stamped at 8:17 p.m. The store she chose was less than 5 minutes from her apartment, a place she visited twice a week. Well-lit, familiar, safe. At 8:38 p.m., her phone connected to the store's Wi-Fi network. 4 minutes later, at 8:42 p.m., the camera above register 4 captured her final smile. But before we get there, it's important to understand something about Hannah's routine in that store. She always parked under the same light pole. She always entered through the east, sliding doors. She usually bought the same items: almond milk, spinach, Greek yogurt, sparkling water. Predictability is comfort. It's also traceable. Inside the store that night, nothing appears out of place. She moves through the aisles with purpose, a reusable shopping bag tucked under her arm. She pauses briefly in the produce section, comparing 2 packages of strawberries. She scrolls through her phone near the dairy case, likely checking her list. At 8:40 p.m., she heads toward checkout. The cashier, 19-year-old Miguel Alvarez, would later testify that she seemed normal. Not rushed, not distracted. He remembers that specifically because they made brief eye contact when he apologized for the line. She smiled. That smile becomes the image the media fixates on. But here's what most people don't notice. Her car keys are already in her hand, not buried in her purse, not clipped to a belt loop. In her hand. That small habit says something about her awareness, about her intention to move quickly from store to vehicle. It suggests she was thinking ahead. At 8:44 p.m., she exits through the east doors. From that moment forward, the story fractures. Because Hannah never makes it home. When she doesn't respond to her sister's 9:30 p.m. text, no one panics. She sometimes took baths on Saturday nights, sometimes watched movies with her phone on silent. But by Sunday morning, when her car is still not in its usual parking space outside her apartment, concern begins to rise. Her sister calls. No answer. Her co-worker sends a message about Monday's appointments. Delivered, not read. At 10:12 a.m., Hannah's neighbor contacts the Lakewood Police Department for a welfare check. Officers arrive at her apartment at 10:47 a.m. There are no signs of forced entry. No disturbance. Her bed is made. Her laptop sits closed on the coffee table. Her car is not there. At 12:03 p.m., officers locate her vehicle in the grocery store parking lot, parked under the same light pole she always used. The driver's side door is closed. The windows are intact. Her reusable shopping bag is visible on the passenger seat. But Hannah is not inside. She is found at 12:17 p.m., several rows away, near a landscape median. Unresponsive. Emergency responders attempt resuscitation. She is transported to St. Anthony Hospital, where she is pronounced deceased shortly after arrival. The initial scene offers few answers. There are no obvious signs of a struggle, no immediate indication of robbery. Her purse is later recovered inside her locked vehicle. Wallet intact. Phone missing. That missing phone becomes the first major question. Detectives secure the parking lot and request all available surveillance footage from the store. Interior cameras, exterior cameras, adjacent businesses. From the beginning, investigators believe the answer must be simple. A random encounter, a carjacking attempt, a confrontation gone wrong. But this is where everything changes, because simplicity can be deceptive. When detectives review the interior footage, they focus on Hannah's interactions. Who stood near her, who exited around the same time, who appeared to follow her toward the doors. They identify several individuals and begin interviews within 48 hours. Each person has an alibi, receipts, GPS data, timestamp transactions. Nothing holds. Meanwhile, Hannah's family grapples with the unthinkable. Her sister flies in from Arizona that Sunday evening. She visits the parking lot before the police tape is fully removed. She stands beneath the light pole where Hannah's car sat and tries to imagine what could have happened in those few minutes between checkout and silence. Because the timeline is narrow, 8:44 p.m., she exits the store. By 9:30 p.m., her phone stops transmitting location data. Less than an hour, in a well-lit parking lot, in a busy shopping center, on a Saturday night. It doesn't make sense. And when something doesn't make sense, investigators often assume they're missing something obvious. But sometimes, what's missing isn't obvious at all. Hannah Mercer was not careless. She was not intoxicated. She was not engaged in risky behavior. She followed routine. She parked under light. She held her keys in her hand, which means whatever happened to her happened quickly, deliberately, and likely within view of camera. But the angle that mattered most would take months to recognize. And by then, a narrative had already formed. A theory had already hardened. A suspect had already been named. What no one realized at the time was that the truth wasn't hidden in the store. It was sitting in the parking lot frame the entire time, waiting to be seen. At 8:44 and 12 seconds p.m., Hannah Mercer steps through the east sliding doors and into the parking lot. The exterior camera mounted above the entrance captures her in partial profile. The footage is clear but distant, the kind designed for general security, not fine detail. She adjusts the strap of her purse on her shoulder. Her keys are still in her right hand. She turns left, heading toward the third row where she always parks. The timestamp rolls forward in steady white digits. 8 hours 44 minutes and 21 seconds. A silver SUV pulls slowly through the main lane, brake lights flickering as it searches for a space. It passes behind her and continues forward. 8 hours 44 minutes and 28 seconds. Hannah reaches the painted crosswalk. She glances briefly to her right, not startled, not alarmed, just a quick scan before stepping off the curb. 8 hours 44 minutes and 36 seconds. She moves out of frame. For nearly 2 minutes, nothing appears unusual. Cars enter, cars exit. Shoppers push carts toward their vehicles. The world continues. But at 8 hours 46 minutes and 2 seconds, a dark sedan enters from the far west entrance of the lot. The camera captures it only partially as it cuts across the outer lane. Headlights on, windows tinted. It does not signal. It does not slow at the stop sign near the cart return. It disappears into the blind area beyond the camera's widest angle. At 8:47 p.m. Another camera, positioned near the pharmacy drive-thru, captures the same sedan idling briefly near the third row. It is angled slightly toward Hannah's usual parking area. The video quality is grainier here. Detectives initially note the vehicle, but cannot make out a plate number. The driver's side window appears lowered halfway. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 19 seconds, Hannah re-enters frame from the far right edge of that camera's view. She is walking faster now. Not running, but faster. Her shoulders appear tense. Her purse strap has slipped lower. She glances behind her once. This is where investigators later slow the footage. Frame by frame. At full speed, it looks like nothing. At half speed, it suggests something else. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds, the sedan's brake lights flare. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 25 seconds, the vehicle inches forward. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 27 seconds, Hannah changes direction. Instead of continuing straight toward her car, she veers slightly left, toward the landscape median, dividing the rows. And then both she and the sedan move out of that camera's field of vision. For 4 minutes, there is no visual confirmation of what happens next. At 8:51 p.m., the dark sedan exits the lot through the east drive. Its headlights are off for a brief moment before turning on fully as it reaches the street. That detail will matter later, but at the time, investigators focus on something else entirely. At 9:02 p.m., a different shopper reports hearing what she describes as a raised voice near the back rows of the lot. She does not call police. She assumes it is an argument between a couple. By the time officers locate Hannah's vehicle the next day, the narrative is already forming. A confrontation, a robbery attempt, a stranger in a sedan. Detectives canvass nearby businesses for additional footage. They retrieve interior and exterior feeds from 3 surrounding stores. They track the sedan as it travels eastbound on West Alameda Avenue at 8:52 p.m. The vehicle's front grille damage becomes visible in a clear camera near a gas station. Within 72 hours, police identify a match. A 2014 dark gray Nissan Altima registered to 26-year-old Marcus Ellery, a Lakewood resident with prior arrests for vehicle theft and misdemeanor assault. Ellery is located on October 18th. His car shows minor front bumper damage consistent with the footage. Inside the vehicle, officers recover a black knit cap and a pair of gloves. Under questioning, Ellery denies involvement. He states he was in the parking lot that evening to meet a friend who never showed. He claims he left around 8:50 p.m. because he grew impatient. His phone records place him in the vicinity at the relevant time. Prosecutors build a theory quickly. They argue Ellery approached Hannah in an attempted carjacking. When she resisted, a struggle occurred. She fled toward the median. He pursued. The encounter escalated. He fled the scene when he realized the lot was too exposed. The medical examiner determines Hannah's cause of death as blunt force trauma combined with environmental exposure. There are no defensive wounds severe enough to indicate prolonged assault. No weapon recovered. The timeline is tight, but prosecutors insist it fits. In May 2024, Marcus Ellery is charged with second-degree murder. The trial begins that November. Inside the courtroom, the jury watches the interior store footage first. They see Hannah smiling at the cashier. They see her keys in her hand. They see her exit calmly. Then they see the exterior clips, the sedan entering, the brake lights, the slight change in Hannah's direction. The prosecution emphasizes that moment at 8 hours 47 minutes and 27 seconds. They argue it is the instant she realizes danger. They replay it repeatedly. But this is where everything narrows. Because once investigators locked onto Ellery's vehicle, every other detail became secondary. The silver SUV that passed behind Hannah at 8 hours 44 minutes and 21 seconds is dismissed as unrelated. The shopper who heard a raised voice is never able to identify the tone or speakers. The missing phone is assumed discarded. and the parking lot camera mounted on the far southeast corner of the building, partially obstructed by a light fixture, is barely discussed. Its footage is entered into evidence, but not emphasized. In fact, during trial, it is shown only once, briefly, at normal speed. No zoom, no enhancement. The jury deliberates for 3 days. They return a guilty verdict. Marcus Ellery is sentenced to 32 years in state prison. Hannah's family expresses relief, but not peace, because even after conviction, there are questions. Ellery maintains his innocence. His defense team files an appeal, arguing the footage is circumstantial and inconclusive. Meanwhile, Hannah's missing phone is never recovered, and some investigators privately acknowledge something uncomfortable. The 4-minute gap between 8 hours 47 minutes and 27 seconds and 8:51 p.m. remains visually unaccounted for. No camera captures the exact point of contact. No witness definitively places Ellery outside his vehicle. Everyone was watching the sedan, but not everyone was watching the entire frame, because in the southeast corner camera, at exactly 8 hours 46 minutes and 58 seconds, something else enters the scene. Something small, something partially obscured, something that did not match the prosecution's theory. It appears for less than 12 seconds, and then it disappears. At trial, it is dismissed as background movement, insignificant, but that single detail would later force a second look at everything. And when someone finally slowed that angle down properly, stabilized the image, and asked the right question, the case no longer fit the narrative that had already been sealed in court. The store camera caught her last smile, but the parking lot angle was still waiting, and it had not told its full story yet. The case might have ended there. A conviction, a sentence, a family trying to rebuild around a verdict that felt solid, even if it didn't feel complete. But in March of 2025, nearly 18 months after Hannah Mercer's death, someone new looked at the file. Her name was Dr. Layla Grant, a digital forensics analyst contracted by the Colorado Innocence Project. She wasn't looking for Marcus Ellery. She wasn't looking to overturn a conviction out of principle. She was reviewing surveillance integrity in cases that relied heavily on video interpretation. Hannah's case stood out for one reason: the unexplained 4-minute visual gap. Dr. Grant requested the raw footage from every exterior camera, not the compressed trial exhibits, but the original files pulled directly from the store's server. What she noticed immediately was something the jury had never been told. The southeast corner camera had a wider field of view than the cropped courtroom version suggested. The trial footage had been slightly zoomed to focus on the driving lanes. In its original form, the frame extended farther into the landscape median area. At 8:46 and 58 seconds p.m., as the timestamp ticks forward in white digital numbers, a figure enters that extreme edge of the frame. Not the sedan, not Hannah, a second pedestrian, partially obscured by the glare of the light pole. At normal speed, it looks like a shadow, but this is where everything changes. Dr. Grant slows the footage to 25% speed. She stabilizes the image to reduce vibration from the wind that night. She adjusts contrast, pulling detail from the darker areas of the frame. The figure becomes clearer. A man in a light-colored hoodie, hood up, moving along the median before Hannah even changes direction. 8 hours 47 minutes and 2 seconds. He pauses near the shrubs. 8 hours 47 minutes and 6 seconds. He steps backward, as if concealing himself between parked vehicles. 8 hours 47 minutes and 19 seconds. Hannah appears in the frame from the right. She is walking faster, but she is not looking at the sedan. She is looking toward the median, toward him. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 23 seconds, the sedan's brake lights illuminate, but the vehicle is still several car lengths away. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 24 seconds, the hooded figure moves forward, one step, then another. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 27 seconds, the exact moment prosecutors told the jury she reacted to the sedan, Hannah veers left, not away from the car, but around it, positioning the sedan between herself and the median. Everyone was watching the wrong thing. The sedan's brake lights became the narrative anchor, but in the expanded frame, the vehicle is slightly behind her. The hooded figure is ahead. At 8 hours 47 minutes and 30 seconds, both Hannah and the hooded man move beyond the edge of the camera's view, deeper into the darker stretch near the rear row. The sedan never accelerates toward her. In fact, at 8 hours 47 minutes and 32 seconds, its brake lights turn off. It remains stationary for 4 seconds. Then it slowly rolls forward, as if uncertain. That hesitation was never highlighted at trial. Dr. Grant overlays timestamps from the pharmacy camera with the southeast corner feed. The synchronization reveals that when the sedan inches forward, the hooded figure is already off-frame with Hannah. The vehicle does not pursue. It drifts. At 8 hours 50 minutes and 58 seconds, when the sedan exits the lot, there is no sign of panic. No abrupt acceleration. No evasive maneuvering. And then comes the detail that rewrites the entire case. At 8:51 and 11 seconds p.m., just 13 seconds after the sedan leaves the southeast camera's view, the hooded figure reappears. Alone, emerging from the darker rear row. He moves quickly toward the far pedestrian walkway. In his right hand is something rectangular, the size of a phone. He does not run. He walks with purpose. And at 8 hours 51 minutes and 24 seconds, he exits the frame in the opposite direction of the sedan. This single detail had been visible the entire time. 12 seconds. At the corner of the screen. Missed because no one zoomed out. Dr. Grant forwards her analysis to Ellery's appellate attorney. A motion for evidentiary review is filed. The court grants limited re-examination of the footage. Under oath, the original detective acknowledges the southeast camera was considered low value because it did not show a clear plate number or facial identification. It was categorized as peripheral. But the periphery is where the truth was hiding. Cell tower analysis is revisited. Ellery's phone pings show minimal movement between 8:47 and 8:51, consistent with remaining inside his vehicle. Meanwhile, investigators traced the path of the hooded figure using additional traffic cameras along the pedestrian walkway that borders the shopping center. At 8:55 p.m., a city camera captures a man in a light hoodie crossing West Alameda Avenue. Enhanced footage reveals a distinctive logo on the sleeve. A local landscaping company. Employment records from that company identify an employee scheduled to finish a late shift at a nearby property that evening. 29-year-old Caleb Vance. Vance had no prior violent felony convictions, but he did have a record of theft and a dismissed harassment charge. When questioned in July 2025, Vance denies being in the parking lot. He claims he went straight home after work, but GPS data from his work-issued tablet contradicts that claim. It places him within 20 meters of the grocery store at 8:46 p.m. A search warrant executed on his residence recovers Hannah's phone, powered off, hidden inside a toolbox in his garage. Forensic analysis confirms her DNA on the case. Confronted with the evidence, Vance admits to approaching Hannah in the parking lot. He claims he intended to steal her phone and purse. He insists he did not intend serious harm. He states she resisted and fell backward during the struggle near the median. His statement aligns with the medical examiner's original findings more closely than the prosecution's theory ever did. In October 2025, Marcus Ellery's conviction is vacated. Charges against Caleb Vance are filed shortly after. For Hannah's family, the emotional terrain is complex. Relief that the right person was identified. Grief renewed by the realization that the truth had been sitting in a courtroom exhibit all along. And a painful understanding that narrative momentum can overpower peripheral detail. The store camera caught her last smile. The jury saw a sedan's brake lights, but what they weren't shown was the full parking lot angle. The man waiting near the median, the direction of her glance, the object in his hand as he walked away. 12 seconds that changed everything. Justice, in the end, did not arrive because of a new witness or a confession pulled from thin air. It arrived because someone widened the frame, because someone asked whether the obvious story was too obvious, and because the smallest detail, buried in the corner of a screen, refused to disappear. Hannah Mercer's life was defined by routine, by caution, by small habits that reflected awareness. In the end, it was a small habit of another kind that corrected the record, looking at the whole picture, not just the center. If there's a lesson in her case, it is this. Truth does not always hide in darkness. Sometimes it waits quietly at the edge of the frame. and only those willing to look beyond the obvious will ever see it.